All right. I want to welcome everybody to the Get Real Leadership Coach Training webinar. My name is Jen Barley, and I'm alongside with Karen Sullivan. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
And we have a fantastic panel today that we're going to be doing a panel discussion around leadership coaching. And I want to introduce you guys to the two panelists out of the possibly three that we're going to be having today. So we have Dana Campbell. Hi, Dana.
Hi there.
Very good. And Barbara Alexander. Barbara?
Hello, everyone.
All right, Barbara's I'm calling from a hotel room in sunny Florida, and that's why her shades are pulled because it looks like a bright day outside, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk to Dana and to Barbara today about some things that they've been learning through coaching in the leadership space and what's been working for their businesses, what hasn't, what are some interesting dynamics that they've experienced and learned through teams, etc. And so why don't we start first with Barbara and Dana, having you both sort of, introduce yourself, the name of your business, who you worked with, and how long you've been doing it for. So Dana, why don't you start?
Okay. So Dana Campbell. The name of my company is called Optimize Core. We work with mid-tier businesses who are dealing with stress and need to build resilience inside the organization in order to help hit some business goal. So we work primarily with director level up all the way to C-suite. And we do a hybrid of coaching and consulting services. And then I've been coaching for 5 years.
Great. I like Optimize Core.
It's an Angeliquism.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I love that. So that's great. And it's interesting with resilience and stress and having those sort of be the backbone because you come out of a whole different world before you started your business that was filled with stress and much needed resilience was needed there. So, so why don't you share with people where you came from before you decided that it was best to optimize your core by having your own business?
Yeah, so I started my career in management consulting. I worked for the Big Four. I don't know that really exists anymore, but I worked at Accenture for a long time before I burnt out, and that led me to go and become a yoga teacher. And I kept teaching yoga, went back into the corporate world, and really saw the need for resilience in the workplace, basically to make people a lot more sane. And then I ultimately realized that I couldn't keep doing the work I had been doing, and this thing called coaching was really calling me.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So perfect. All right, good. And Barbara, what about you? Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, who you work with, and how long you've been doing it?
Sure. So my company name is Barbara C. Alexander. So I decided to just keep my name as my company for now. And I work with leaders and individual contributors in different size organizations. And my passion is around helping them to develop their own authentic style of leadership. So I use a variety of tools and content that I've developed over the years to help them be the best leader that they can be based on who they are, not who they think they should be or who they're told they should be.
Love it.
I have been coaching, it'll be going on 4 years now. So I've focused more in the corporate space for the last year or two. I had worked with entrepreneurs for about a year or two before that.
Excellent. Very cool. Good. And we have Nicki has joined us as well. So Nicki Crossland is also a leadership coach, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her business. And so what we're doing, Nicki, right now is the name of your business, who you work with, and how long you've been doing it.
Okay, so sorry about the technical issues I was having before I joined, and as Karen is one of my heroes, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I tried to join as Karen Sullivan as well, so there you go. Nicki Crossland, that's who I am. I run a company called Key Performance. I tried to be a little bit clever when I first came up with the branding because I'm massively into energy, so I was like, energy, key, yeah, that's cool. except everybody pronounces it QI performance, because there's a program in the UK called QI, and I think it's very popular. And I find myself getting triggered every time someone says, so how's QI performance going? And I'm going, key performance is doing really well. So I started the company in March 2016. So it's I'm just closing out my third year. I primarily work with senior leaders and their teams. It's a lot of one-to-one coaching, and since doing the work with you guys, I'm transitioning much more cleverly, I would say, into the team coaching. I've always been quite passionate about it. I'm a massive believer that if you get better leaders in organizations, you'll just have better organizations. So when I first got into first started running my own business after a very long career as an international HR professional, I struggled to find the course. I know this is almost a little bit pluggy, but I can't overemphasize the massive difference that it's made doing the work with you guys, because it's just added a different dimension to my team coaching. So I want to do that even more. So
I love it.
There you go.
Cool. So yeah, and full disclosure, Dana, Barb, and Nicki have all been a part of the Get Real Leadership and Corporate Coach Training Program, which is why we're tracking so much of what it is that they're doing and watching to see from when we first met them to where they are today. What Karen and I both love is that the three women on the phone here on the webinar have completely different styles and how they approach the work that they do. And they're which has been fun to watch and to see, and to also show that as all of us as coaches are finding our styles, our ways that we approach organizations, that the world needs all of us to be able to go out and do this. And it is accepting of a whole bunch of different styles and a whole bunch of different niches that come into place of how to best be able to help organizations. So, which is great. So Karen, you want to kick us off and ask the first question?
No, I wanted to just say something really quick before that.
Notice styles, difference of styles. Go ahead, Karen.
So one of the big things here, I love, Jen, that you just said, right? This isn't like a cookie cutter kind of thing. And what we're doing is we're basically saying, okay, here's like a methodology, and here's it, and this is what works, that we found to be really successful. And it doesn't matter if you're nonprofit. It doesn't matter if you're looking at Major League Baseball. It doesn't matter if you're what you're doing work life, how funny is it that I can't even think of the other half of that work life, whatever balance, right? Because I don't have it. But it doesn't matter, like, as long as you have the systems in place, this stuff works with anybody. It works with teams and works with individuals. So I just wanted to throw that out there, Jen.
Love it. Great.
Okay. So I will now that I'm ready to ask people the questions, is Barb, I'm going to start with you, and I'd like to know what surprised you the most about doing the work that you do.
Kind of piggybacks off of what you said, which is that there's space for every one of us, because we each have our own unique style and our own unique approach to leadership and corporate coaching. Because when I first got into this, I sort of thought, well, is this cluttered? Because you see a lot of people out there doing it. And then as I've been out there talking to people and networking, people are saying, you're doing something quite different. And they hone in on my own approach and who I am, which is interesting, because that's even the methodology and the philosophy that I coach on, which is authenticity. So that's really what surprised me the most, is that it's really not a competitive space per se, that I come from this place of there's room to play for everyone.
Cool. Love that. And how about you, Nicki? Same thing. What surprised you the most about doing the work that you do?
How much I love it. I think I intuitively, I do. I think I intuitively knew it was the direction I wanted to go in. But I'd been a generalist in HR for quite a long time, working at the levels of the people I coach. And I think part of me was, is this a big risk? Am I going to get as much fulfillment out of this as I do, so, you know, if I'm doing a major reorganization or if I'm creating a brand new team, that sort of thing. And what I'm very, very surprised at is how much there is still so much to learn and how much impact. And you can change people's lives fundamentally without realizing that you've had as big an impact as you have. And I love that, because that was one of my motivations for getting into coaching in the first place, was my first experience of a coach, working with me at a time where I was as close to burnout as it's possible to get without actually burning out. And the lady that I worked with kind of took me through, it was about a 4-month program. And at the end of it, I was thinking, I hope I can have that kind of impact on somebody one day, because she transformed my life, getting me back to where I should have been and never, you know, not derailing. So yeah, it's that surprise, really multifaceted.
Excellent. Thanks, Nicki. And Dana, I'm going to throw that one at you too, and then we'll jump to a new question, Jen, and you can ask the next question. But Dana, so what really surprised you the most about doing the work that you do?
I think how it's all about the basics. Like, you think you have to go in with 1,000 bells and whistles and everything, you know, you have to be the absolute expert in everything. And whether you're working with an individual or a big group, it still comes back so often to the fundamentals of really simple, basic stuff that people are skipping over, and it's causing them so much pain, or a team is skipping over and it's causing them so much pain.
You know, I love that you said that, because it's so funny. Jen and I talk all the time when we're doing the facilitation. It's like, you know, if we're working too hard, then we're doing something wrong. And the interesting thing, even having the conversations with the groups, that what we're having conversations about, it's simple, but it's not easy all the time. So we're not, you know, we sit there and say, well, listen, we are not talking rocket science here. We're talking neuroscience, right? We're talking like what goes on in your head, and helping them connect to that. And then it's just like, oh, all right, well, this didn't have to be so hard. And we're like, yeah, no, didn't have to. Cool. Thanks, Dana.
Mm-hmm. I'll throw something in on that. You know, I find myself, this is something that happens all the time, based on what Dana just said for me, is, you know, as Karen and I plan out our things, I'm like, oh my God, that's so basic. Who's going to know that? And I don't want to look like the idiot in front of the room who can't read the room right. And so I will go into sometimes wanting to jump over those foundation and basic pieces for a whole bunch of reasons, right? I want to have extra value, or I really want to show that we have the next evolution of what it is that we're talking about, when the reality is they need the foundations. They need the basics. It's how you do the basics and engage them in the basics that will make or break the scenario and the situation, for sure. But that is a lesson that I have personally learned for myself, is I always assume people should know this stuff, and they don't. So it's an interesting way to think about it. So I would agree with you, Dana. That's something that surprises me. I always feel that people should be beyond where they are. But I just don't think that in corporations, nonprofits, educational, institutes, that people take the time to connect with those basics.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So here's my question that I want to ask now. We have a list here, so I'm going to I think I want to ask, what is a big lesson that you've learned recently through your leadership coaching, through your programs that you offer, through working with people? What's a big lesson that you've learned recently? And we'll start with Dana this time.
Oh, you didn't give me much time.
I know.
Can I give two?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is how important it is to set expectations. And Jen and Karen know this, because I had a situation happen where I thought I had set expectations with the organization pretty well, and it turns out I didn't get nitty gritty enough with them. And a program can really go sideways when the expectations aren't crystal clear on all fronts. The other one, which I'm seeing a lot of lately, it kind of twofold is one, we assume because people have made it to like executive level that they, somehow have it all figured out. And the executive teams are like some of the most dysfunctional teams that I've been working with. But along with that, that's really interesting, and I think creates a lot of that dysfunction, is how much fear people have against going up against like a CEO, even in a small organization. Or how the CEO isn't seeing what's happening in the organization because nobody's willing to bring it up to them. So that kind of like lack of courage, I've been seeing a lot lately as well.
Interesting. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. So the lessons learned, right, about expectations. So when you think of expectation setting, Dana, where do you see how important it is? Because there's probably in a couple different places.
Oh, I think there's many different places. I think when you're signing a contract with an organization, hugely important there. I think every time you roll in a new group of stakeholders, so whether it's just one person or whether it's a whole team of people, really setting expectations with them. If you're facilitating a training or an offsite, setting it at the beginning of the day and kind of recapping throughout. And then obviously in coaching partnerships, really kind of having them, that's the whole like own the agenda piece, I think, as well with your coaching clients.
Love it. Yeah. So I'm going to just throw in a couple things here, is that there are so many different periods that we engage within organizations, right? So one is learning about the opportunity. 2 is proposing the opportunity. 3 is agreeing to terms, and 4 is delivering on that opportunity. And there's different levels of expectations that totally need to be managed, because you could have a whole team of people on one page and then you show up in the room and they have no clue why you're there, right? For whatever reason, communication went south, people didn't communicate it properly, they forgot to tell people, maybe they said something else that wasn't necessarily your understanding. So it's always being able to have the ability to even stop in the middle of something and say, whoa, let's just back up and get on the same page here. What's really going on? Just out of curiosity, what were you guys expecting today? What were you told about today? What do you hope is going to happen from today? Well, let me tell you from my perspective, what's going to go down. And then as I say that, how does that meet your expectations or not? Because sometimes what Karen and I have learned is that we may have an expectation to go into a day and deliver X, Y, and Z, and we will scrap that puppy in about 20 minutes because the expectation is what the rest of the people were expecting, or that's not what they actually need. So I love that, Dana. I think that's a big one. We'll come back to the fear of executives and fear that executives have in just a bit.
Can I say one more really fast? Because I think this is really important as it relates to the program you guys put on too, because there is so much like group facilitation. I think be ready to scrap your plan, building off what you just said. I've facilitated 5 offsites this year, and every single one, the entire agenda has had to change. And it's not because like I'm not holding to the agenda, but because like last minute new meetings crop up and all of a sudden they're like, no, your window went from being 8 hours to 6 hours or 5 hours or whatever. And so I think that one's really important.
I love it. Yeah. Always expect it to go differently than you think, right? Because then you can roll with it. And a key there is just, how do you have a tool kit filled with plug and play items to be able to say, oh, this team actually needs this, so let me pull out 4 different things on demand to be able to facilitate that. Because I personally think the worst thing we can do when we're working for clients is sticking to what we agreed with because we agreed to it. I think that's one of the biggest downfalls to corporate engagements, is not having the flexibility, give people what they need in the moment versus what you agreed upon.
So I'm gonna just piggyback on that really quick too. And it's interesting. Jen and I were actually making a pitch to a company regarding, bringing one or 2 of our programs into their organization. And we told them the story of being at a training and having in the first, half hour needing to scrap a 6-month program that we created to have to create a new 6-month program. And that was when we had, you know, a conversation with the woman who we were making the pitch to. She said one of the biggest things that sold her on hiring us to bring us into their corporation was the fact that we scrapped a 6-month program in 40 minutes because we knew it didn't fit. She's like, I knew right then that you guys were the right people because I don't know what's going to happen. So I love that you're going to create a program, and I also love that you can scrap it.
Can I just build on that again a little bit now, because I think that's maybe one of the things that is super powerful about what you did with the Get Real program first time round. I personally felt very isolated. You know, there's not that many people in the UK at the moment that have obviously been on the program. Well, there's one. And so having access to like-minded people, but also people that really get that dynamic nature that the corporate environment just naturally exists in. It's not a slow world anymore. Things do change, and people have great intentions when they first engage you. They want to do this stuff, and then all of a sudden they get loads of pressure to add 50 million other things onto the agenda, and they inherently still want to do the people work as well, and they want to work with people who get that, who understand that it's not about being rigid, that you've got to be commercial, you've got to be focused. So I think adding all of that together, then what you guys do is you've created a community where we go, I've got to scrap a 6-month program. I've been working on this for ages. Can you give me some ideas? Suddenly the panic goes away. You can come up with, you know, oh, remember when we did this? What about that? And I feel that has been super, because there's lots of us that jump on mini calls together to create things, and I think what you've done has really enabled that reduction of that feeling of isolation massively.
Yeah, it's huge.
Can I jump on that now too, because I think I've got something to share. So yeah, I sold in a program that we've called Leadership Institute in a mid-sized law firm. And there are about 12 associate attorneys that are part of the Leadership Institute. So working with one of the partners and shareholders, we came up with a curriculum which is like over, you know, the next year. My challenge was they only would give me 90 minutes every other month. So I'm like, okay, so how do I introduce some concepts and have that reinforced in 90 minutes and then, you know, every other month? So it was great because we did have that collaboration when I first got the project sold in. It was like, okay, now how do I really make this work? And everybody on the team within the Get Real team had something phenomenal to contribute. And then just to piggyback off of the flexibility, you go in the room and something's changed. Clearly, you know, I had to have like some backup plans around one particular, my last workshop, because I had people teamed up from, it was like a part 2 to the one before, and who couldn't make it, who had to go to court, you know, who had a funeral to go to. So really like on the fly, I had to figure out how I was going to reshift these work groups. So absolutely, definitely going into these things, you have to have the, you know, the plan B, because ultimately something changes.
Yeah, which makes it fun. Like, to me, that's the fun part, because I always like when Karen and I are going and say, I can't wait to see how this is going to turn out. Ready, go. Hi, I'm Jen, right? And then we do our thing. And it's because it's so interesting to see the ebb and the flow. And it's really about being able to read what's happening in the room and being skilled at identifying or asking the right questions to be able to find out what's happening in the room, which is good. So let's see. So Barb, what about for you? What's a big lesson you've learned recently?
Things, lots of lessons. Things don't happen according to your timeline. So, you know, you may have like these grandiose plans of, you know, trying to have this gig, you know, sold and start, you know, in a certain time frame. And, you know, they're not really on our schedule. It's, you know, it's the organization. And I think it's slow and steady wins the race. Somebody texted me the other day, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just having patience and having persistence and, you know, do diligence around an opportunity, because it doesn't mean if they don't get back to you that there's no interest. So that's the big lesson. So
I love that, Barb, and I love that you even said that, right? And that text message was, slow and steady wins this race.
oh
right?
okay.
So that's this race. Some races, and it's funny because it's and for this one it is, and for some it's going to be boom, let's just hit it and run. But I got to tell you, the way that you have, have handled this potential client is it's follow up. It is follow up. It's persistence, and and you're not being a pain in the ass. You're providing that value. So this is, and now the thing is, okay, great. What is it? Yesterday, you're like, holy crap, this guy is going to, follow up with me. And then 3 days ago, it's just like these ladies in the same organization are following up with you. So it's your constant, I know this is important. I know that we can provide value. I know that this is the right direction, and throwing the value back at them and staying in contact with them. Because I hear so many times people are like, I don't want to be a pest. I don't want to be a pest. I don't want to be it's as long as you're showing up and you're providing some kind of value, or it's just like, hey, I saw this article, it made me think of you, blah, 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 blah. I saw that you were in the newspaper about X, Y, and Z. This is really cool what you're doing. And that's just a side note. If you could set Google alerts for different things about different organizations or different people that you're plugged into, and any time that person comes up, I get a list of things like each day in the afternoon about different companies that we're thinking about in my Google alerts, that what's new for that company, or what's that VP doing, or what's going on with these people, so I can stay plugged in, so I can stay plugged into them. Love it.
All right. So we did have a question that came through from Sarah, and she said, can you please clarify what you're terming the basics? So this goes back to earlier we had talked about how what surprised us is how much people need the basics. So Dana, for you, what would you say that some of the basics are?
I think it goes back to trust building is like something every team that I've worked with has to work on. I think basic communication skills, like really, I know I'm using the word basic, but like really fundamental, how people stay in the loop. I think just even dialing it back and having real and honest conversations about people's expectations. I know we talked about expectation about like a program or something, but this is in a working relationship that people are often not doing. So that's kind of what I was referring to as the basics.
Very cool. Nicki, what would you add to that list of basics that you find that organizations are still craving?
I'm going to call it, probably my area would say it's the unconscious understandings, which is probably building off what Dana said. But most of the organizations I work with are international, and the people that are in the teams that I'm working with are in more than one team. And what I discover with every single team I'm working with is, if I was to ask them for their singular definition of what is the purpose of this team, why do you actually even come together, they can't tell me. They can tell me their organizational objectives. They can tell me their individual objectives. But, well, what is the purpose of this team? What's my role and my contribution on this team? How do I show up on this team so that I'm working effectively with other people? Getting that level of clarity that's what I'm going to call the basics. And I've also seen it be so powerful. Once people get there, go, oh, wow, I didn't even think about it like that. I'm the HR director. I'm the HR director on this team, and this team. It's like, absolutely not. Your role on this team is going to be different to your role on another team. Getting that is super, super powerful.
Yeah. Interesting. And Barb, what would you say are some of the basics that you feel that you've had to bring into the organizations that you sort of feel like they should already know, but they don't?
Yeah, I mean, what it means to be an effective leader is basic. and it doesn't necessarily mean like leader by title. So it's, as an individual, I may not have direct reports, but I'm leading myself and I influence the people around me. So I'm in a leadership role. I'm leading my clients, I'm leading my colleagues, I'm leading whoever I'm interacting with. And then, that makes for effective collaboration. So it really starts with the individual and really bringing out their best leadership qualities.
Perfect. I'll throw a couple in there. The surprising thing to me are basics even about listening and communication. Being able to know you can bring something up and not lose friends and get fired, right? So how can people speak up? How do people share ideas? Basics around giving feedback, receiving feedback, clarifying information, active listening, being able to ask better questions, being able to have communication skills. Now, the funny thing is that's my hot button. I love communication. I'm an over communicator, and I will talk too much at times, right, Karen?
Yes.
I can see you. You know that, right?
Okay.
So, and it's to me something that comes so easy to be able to communicate. So therefore, I often assume everybody knows how to do it. But even some of those types of skills and having to really get to them. But even what is a team and what makes a great team? So yeah, that's good. So hopefully that helps, Sarah. Karen, anything you would add into that?
Jen, that's what I was just going to say, that a lot of the times with, you'll get hired to go into an organization and work with a team, and you will realize that it is a group of people that have 10 different agendas. So what it actually is helping them create a team instead of just being a group of individuals that work for a company. And I think that that's a big piece of it, because the groups are like, 10 different ships going in 10 different directions, and eventually we're going to get somewhere. But let's get all these people on this boat and have them go rowing in the same direction. Now, I don't need them all rowing like that crew team kind of thing at the same, like I want people to shake it up, but I want you to be on the same boat. I want you to challenge each other, but I want you to be on the same boat. And helping people understand that, I think, is huge in the beginning. And the thing here too, Jen, I think a big part of it is your programs and the way you create things and the way you go into organizations. You're the one that sets the tone right from the beginning. So it's that being that expert in how you're showing up, and it's going in and it's owning that room, and it's having that confidence that no matter what happens or what you get thrown at you, you can hit it, even if it's a curveball.
All right. So Nicki, I'm going to ask you this question. What do you think is the most important factor that you consider before deciding to work with a client? So you're sort of in pitch mode. They're telling you what they need. You're listening to it. What is it that is really important for you to consider before saying yes?
If I can ascertain that they genuinely want to do the work and that they are coachable, because without that, sorry, I'm smiling, Karen, because I'm thinking about that post the other day where I said, boom, Karen puts the phone down. I think all of the coaches that I've met through this program are intensely committed to their clients and to their clients being successful. But I once heard an analogy where the coach was getting blamed for something. I've had coaches in this organization before and it's never worked. And the response I heard was fabulous. And the guy said, if you've got a diet coach and you're working with and you want to lose weight and you don't do any of the work that you've agreed to do with the coach, is it the coach's fault you haven't lost weight? And I think this is the same kind of ethos. So I really need to hear that the person is committed and that they are coachable, because otherwise I'm just wasting my time and their money.
Love it. What about for you, Barb? What would be something that's important for you to consider before deciding to work with a client?
Oh. I would just piggyback again off of what Nicki said. I mean, I have a very high energy level. And I realized after accepting a coaching opportunity. It was a one-on-one coaching opportunity. Working with somebody with a very low energy level was not my thing. So, lovely woman, really lovely woman. And I really wanted to help her, but it was something that just didn't jazz me up. And I knew I wasn't doing her any good. It just didn't feel like a good match to me. So I want to find if it's a one-on-one coaching opportunity, I want to find individual, people that want to go from, good to great, right? Or, great to outstanding. I'm not, if I start to sense there's dragging across the finish line or having to pump somebody up, it's just not my thing. It's not something I want to do.
Love it. Good. And Dana, what about for you? What's an important factor that you consider before deciding to work with an organization?
So an organization in particular, if they're hiring me to coach an individual, I won't do it without a 360 at this point. That's an absolute must. I made the mistake of saying yes to that one time, and it made it very, very tricky. So I think that having the organization actually give you an in, especially if they're wanting the person to grow in a certain way, or they're wanting them to develop or overcome a challenge, having specific feedback that you aren't only getting from HR or not only getting from the point person, but getting from a group of people is really, really helpful.
Love it. So I'll be curious, Kara, if we were to ask you that question, what would you say? Because I have an answer, but I want to know your answer.
If they're not fun, if they're not open for the disruption, if they're not open for shaking it up, and if they try to micromanage me or the process, I'm out. I'm not jumping on the phone 20 times with you to help you create an hour-and-a-half thing. It's just not it. You got to trust me. And if you don't, then you can call somebody else.
That's so funny, because I like to play this game with Karen and I sometimes, have her answer a question, see what it is. And you can see on my little paper, oh, you can't see, it looks weird. It says trust, right? If they don't trust us to do what we can do with the appropriate amount of time. And I love that you said, if it's an hour-and-a-half gig and we're talking for 5 meetings to get that done, that's not a good fit for us, right? If there was a 3-year program and you want to have more meetings, that's okay too, but having the trust there. So that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I digress. I like to play games and find out what's happening in Karen's world. What?
What's the next game, Jen?
Okay. Well, I know your answer to this, but let's hear from everybody else. So how do you guys create content for the programs that you deliver? So not the one-on-one coaching, but Barb, thinking about for the law firm that you worked with, and Nicki and Dana, some of the organizations that you've worked with, how do you go about deciding how to create the program for that? Who wants to start? It's a big question.
I'll start.
Okay.
So it really starts with where they are now and where they want to be. So it's individually based in terms of the organization. So if I want to use the law firm as an example, I tapped into the toolkit that I had at the Get Real, from the Get Real training. That was one place that I looked, and I did the edge exercise that we learned. So I helped them. That was the very first workshop that we did, which was to get them to think where they are now to where they want to be. And then from there, I started to fill in content for the next several months. So it was based on some of the tools and training that we got out of Get Real. Some of it has been my own content that I've developed over the last several years. I'm certified in another program, which is how to help leaders develop their own authentic style. So I wove that in. And, I have to give a, shout out to this emotional intelligence bandwagon that I'm on, because it just seems to be opening tremendous doors for me. So as soon as, I say I'm certified in emotional intelligence, I can get a speaking gig, I can get, a conversation going with a potential client. So I've chosen to weave emotional intelligence into all of my programs, whether it's an individual coaching opportunity or if it's in group or team engagements.
Perfect. Good. Good. Nicki or Dana?
So I do a combination, probably not dissimilar to what Barb's mentioning. So I've got some stuff that I've done previously that has been worked very well. But when I'm doing programs, I integrate my early days from the energy leadership training. Pretty much everything that you guys have done with us, I've integrated into most of the stuff that I've done because it fits so well. I have to say I did one of them really badly, and that was and it was actually a really beautiful learning exercise as a result, because it really helped me see that the way that I positioned it, the way I'd set it going just was not how you guys had intended it. So I'd had to go back and like, oh, that's why I didn't do that so well, did I? And then as Barb said, the emotional intelligence stuff, this is where all of the work really, really takes place. Even if people are not calling it emotional intelligence, that's absolutely what it is. Because most of the people I work with, they know technically how to do their stuff. They've got huge amounts of years of experience. They know what they're doing in that space. But as you were mentioning earlier, getting them to speak to each other, getting them to understand each other's agenda, understanding how to do the working relationship dynamic, doing basics like, sorry, back to basics, Sarah, but doing basics like being able to give meaningful feedback that is best intention for the other, so that you're not going to derail somebody else by giving really clumsy feedback. So all of those sorts of things, I've integrated it from lots of places, but I'm pretty much following Barb in the emotional intelligence space as well, because I think it's where it's at.
Very cool. And what about you, Dana? Because I know you do a lot of custom and you've done a lot of retreats recently for executives and such. How do you pull together the content for that?
I pull out my toolkit from you guys. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same as what Nicki and Barb talked about. I feel like the exercises that we learned in the Get Real Leadership program were so incredibly helpful and just so immediately applicable that they became really important for me. And then I, same to Nicki, pull in a lot of stuff that I've done previously, or sometimes I create new stuff. Or in the moment, sometimes I create hybrid exercises of a couple of different exercises and have to distill them down.
But if you found though that doing this work and within the group that we've had, that's given you the confidence to do that, to know that you're...
I mean, I felt like coming out of the first weekend, I immediately had the confidence to do it. Like that first weekend kind of just made it feel, back to my point earlier around like it can be simple. It doesn't need to be so overcomplicated. And I think it just gave me the platform to stand on to say, yes, I can go sell this work. That doesn't mean I do it perfectly. Like you, Nicki, I've had a couple of flubs and I've had to learn and adjust from there, and that's okay.
Yeah. So when that happened, by the way, in the session, I just said to the guys, right, this is a disaster. This is not going anywhere near where I want it to go. So how I'm going to recommend is we do this instead. So I fronted into it, because actually I remembered you guys saying that don't hide if you feel that you're in a space that it's not going where you need it to go. It's much more powerful to turn to the group and say, no, this is not cutting it. I can see you're not gelling with this. Let's ditch this and let's do something else. So.
That's one of the hardest things to do when you're leading a room, is by just saying midpoint, in the middle, we need to scrap this, or we need to do, I know where we're heading and I'd like to shift us 5 degrees this way and let's go in this direction. And being able to do that by telling what's happening in the room or what the intention is. It's tough to do, right? Because we all want to be professional and we want to be able to lead the room and know our stuff. But when we can call an audible mid-exercise, shows the best way of being a professional and expert in the room. It means you are so good that you are willing to throw out what you need to in that moment in service of the team. And it's a whole different kind of mindset that you have to have around it. But being able to call the audible is because you want to be able to support the team in the best way possible. So I love that, Nicki. That's great. So just out of curiosity, from where this, I'm throwing this, this question as a new question is, what do you think is possible? Your big vision for where you are with your business? Where do you see yourself going a year from now or 5 years from now? It doesn't really matter, but I'd be curious to hear that, because I probably have known Barbara the longest of the three of you. And so to see where you were to where you are now has been a big step. And I know with Nicki and Dana, some of the things that we've learned about each other through the program, I've seen the steps moving into a new direction. But where do you go from here? So Dana, what about you? What do you think your big vision is?
I have a hard time answering that.
Yeah, I know, and I didn't give that as a prep one at all. I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one. I think it's becoming a little bit more clear. I think, when I graduated from my initial coaching program, it was so like, oh, I just want to coach. I want to coach as much as I can. And I'm getting to a place now where the business is so full, that's actually not a reality. So a huge part of my vision this year, and I've already started to do this, is that I've built a team of coaches who are working with me and helping me execute on a lot of the work that I've sold. I think going further into this year, I want that to end up looking like I'm not just doing that on the corporate side, but also on the personal side, so that I'm reducing down the number of clients I'm working with and able to make bigger impact there. And then also, I figured out that a huge passion of mine, which I was not expecting, is helping other entrepreneurs put cash in their pockets. So like, it's a really exciting opportunity to provide high paying opportunities to other coaches. So that's kind of the big vision for this year. I think the other thing that's been nagging me for probably 2 years is it's really easy in the leadership space to say yes to like anything that comes your way that's leadership. And I have this really, like I said at the very beginning, really deep desire to kind of change the face of the workplace from a, like, we're all so stressed out and running around and crazy all the time. And so I'm really looking at how can I weave in more of my yoga, mindfulness, EQ background, and really have some of those conversations that need to be had in the workplace.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, it's fun to see how things ebb and flow and change, and how you pick a lane and then you pick out other things that you have as your own personal stuff that can easily weave into corporate as well. Very cool. What about you, Barb? What's your bigger vision?
I never had a big vision when I started coaching, right? So my vision was just to kind of replace my corporate income when I left corporate back in 2013, 2014. And as I've been getting more involved in team and organization opportunities, I'm realizing that I can make a bigger impact and that my business can be bigger than what I've been sort of envisioning for myself. And similar to what Dana said, I'm not at the point where I'm adding team members. I mean, I've got some support people like a web person and a VA and some added administration help, but I envision that it will get bigger, where I will have people that I will be lining up to work with me. I'm shifting too. So it's like, as you go through this and as you work with people, you start to develop where your true passions are. And, I'm seeing myself probably working more with women in the workplace and helping them with more of the fulfillment and the life balance, so you can, break through those gender barriers, and, you can, achieve what you want to achieve while still having fulfillment in, both in your career and your life. So that seems to be the shift that I'm heading in, and you learn more about yourself, and you learn really what excites you and where you can make the most impact. And I think a lot of it comes out of I spent 25 years in corporate, and kind of reflecting back on my own experience as well.
Love it. Very cool. What about for you, Nicki?
The foggiest idea. No, that's a little bit disingenuous. But when I left my in-house corporate role, I struggled emotionally with the idea that I would ditch my HR career. And I think I spent probably the first 18 months, even to 2 years, still getting pulled back into that space. Part of that is because I like being part of something. I want to make a massive impact. I want to be part of the team, etc. So for me, I was probably hanging on to something that I didn't need to. As I started to trust my intuition more, I am very, very much drawn to the team coaching and the senior leadership stuff. And I have this very altruistic view. So for those of you that are, energy leadership, I have this strapline which says creating environments where anabolic leadership is the norm, because I genuinely believe it can happen. And, if you've got the right attitudes and the right mindsets, it will have such a massive impact on organizations. So I just want to get even more in that space. And I do want people, I do want to have a small organization. Don't want to be big. I've got no desire to have kind of 50, 60 people or anything like that. But I think probably 5 to 10 size organization with support in there is where I'm looking over the next 5 years.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So Kara, I won't ask you that question, but I will share it with everybody, our new tagline.
Go.
Okay. So it's Karen and I just sort of, because we ebb and we flow and we go, but we've decided that our solid line of what we do is we build play to win cultures for bold consumer brands. And so the way we do the play to win cultures is through many different avenues, but that's sort of our big statement, so to speak, that just got narrowed in, which is great. Florence did ask a question here. Dana's been answering. I love that online. And she wanted to know, do any of you use assessments as part of your team coaching? And Dana did answer that we use the EQI and the EQI 360 as part of the practices, which is a certification through the program. And I think that everybody here definitely has a handful of assessments that they do use. And it's funny because a lot of times Karen and I will do proposals, and in the proposals we're like, we will implement an assessment. And we don't say which one because we don't even know what they need because we haven't even met with them yet to determine what it's going to be. So it's kind of interesting with that. But there's a wide variety that we use. We use 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. We use EQI. We use there's a team coaching on productivity and engagement assessment that we use. And I know that Nicki and Dana and Barbara probably use a few other ones as well. So. All right, Kara. So did you have another question you were wanting to ask?
Yeah, I just have just real quick, and I'd love to ask each one of you ladies this, and I'll start with you, Dana. It's how is the support that Jen and I have been able to offer you before, during, and after our program been valuable to you? I
mean, I think that beyond the toolkit, it was the most helpful part and continues to be the most helpful part in that, Nicki mentioned isolation earlier. It's very easy doing this kind of work to feel isolated, which is kind of ironic. And I think just feeling like you guys are really thought partners in if I'm thinking about something and I can really run something by you, and your generosity in being able to tap into the experience you have had and see things the way that they do work out or don't work out or whatever has been so enormously helpful. I feel like somebody has my back. When I go into some of these conversations, whether they're hard conversations or easy conversations, and it's definitely given me a lot more confidence.
Thanks, Dana. And how about you, Nicki?
Very, very similar. I think your accessibility is something that I find very, very useful. I mean, notwithstanding we have quite a time difference between us, but there has not been an occasion in the last year where we've been, when I've reached out to you and asked for anything where you haven't responded very, very, very quickly, which can include jumping on a phone call at, late at night, early in the morning, sending texts over, sending information, offering suggestions, and it just, it is literally about you. I don't feel on my own, and it makes a massive, massive difference. And also I think the practicality of what you do. I'm a very, very pragmatic person. And I have mentioned this before on a post that I put on LinkedIn, but I want to emphasize it now. I did a program before I came on the one with you guys. It cost me a lot of money. It was because I knew I wanted to go into team coaching. It cost me a lot of money. It was a UK-based program with a very well-known business school in the UK. And it was an utter waste of both my time and my energy. And I was so deflated when I walked away from it. Then when I saw your videos, you know, the first leading stuff that you've been doing recently as well here, I was thinking, oh, crikey, they speak my language, but it's in America, should I go? I'm like, yeah, do it. And it's the best decision I've ever made, without a doubt.
Cool.
I love it.
Excellent, excellent. And what about you, Barb?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of what, you know, Dana and Nicki said, which is the sounding board. So, you know, after the first weekend that we were together in Tampa, I had like 150% more confidence to go into a conversation about, you know, a corporate coaching team building opportunity. But once you have that conversation, it's like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? And you were both there for us. It was, you know, as I was navigating through several different opportunities, it's very reassuring to know that you're like, I'm following in somebody's footsteps who's already paved the way. And
Cool.
I'm not recreating the wheel, and I'm not trying to, you know, do something, you know, that uncharted waters. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you've created a phenomenal community in this Get Real world. I adore these two ladies. They've helped me tremendously. I think we've all, Dana, I think you were my, we debriefed each other when we went through the EQ assessment. So, and Nicki with some learning around doing EQ presentations. So you both individually have supported us, and then having access to this community has been invaluable.
Cool. And just a side note, the cool thing with Barb too is Barb's like, hey, I got some questions. We're like, good, meet us at the cabin in Freehold. And let's have a beer.
I know. We get to meet Barbara over beer. We're like, this sounds like a beer meeting. I'll meet you in a half an hour. It worked out well, and we wish many of you lived closer. Perfect. All right.
Wrap this up.
Right now. So we're at the top of the hour. So thank you guys very much for coming on and sort of sharing sort of the things that you've learned and your big vision of where it is that you think you're hoping to, you're continuing to step forward into. Plus sort of the nuances that can really come up in this important work that we all do. So I do want to post for everybody, Karen, and I'll just do it through the chat box, that if you want to find out more about the training that that we're a part of, and we have a new class starting in May, it is kickstartyouredge.com/coach training. And you can go and check out some information, have a download of the brochure, but we have a great class forming that we would love for people to be a part of. And to Dana and Nicki and to Barbara, thank you so much for taking your time on this Monday to share some of your insights. I can speak for Karen and myself when I say we just love watching what the three of you are doing in this world, and it is needed and it's fun, and your unique spins on how you do it is just, it's just so wonderful to be a part of. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
lady.
Karen. Anything else you have to say?
Wrap it up, Valley. Land the plane.
All right, so we got 2 more of our webinars coming up soon, and you can check out the emails for the details on that. And on that note, everybody have a beautiful week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.